Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Figma for EDU monthly workshop. This is the monthly workshop for June, where we are going to be covering vector illustration and Figma Draw. We're going to begin just talking about what vector illustration in Figma is. Many of you may already know vector design or vector illustration is creating graphics that are scalable. It's math-based. So when you're thinking shapes, even when you're thinking like text and typography, anything that is solid and graphic that is vector based can be scaled up and down. In Figma, you can create these graphics a number of ways. I'm going to show you just a few different examples that we're going to be covering today. Here, when I select this object, you'll see here on the canvas, when I select it, over on the left, I can see in the layers panel, I see an expression of that object. I see the visual here on my canvas. Over here on the right, I get a sense of what that object is, as well as properties that move it across the space and change its color, its stroke, etc. So this right here is a polygon shape. So by adjusting this little circle, right, I can actually adjust the radius and I can adjust the count. I'm going to show you how to access these in just a moment, but here, this is a basic vector object. Now, when I move down, you can see here, this too is a vector object. It is created using the points themselves. So one step off from a vector shape that is a kind of like a live object down to an object where you actually control the individual points of how it's created. This is a color fill. The fill is over here on the right. You're going to notice that there's actually a number of different types of fills. You're going to see gradient fills. You're going to see solid color fills. You're going to see image fills. So the vector shapes that you're working with can contain color, shapes. They can contain color, patterns, images, etc. Now, when we think about the outside of a vector object, that too is also math-based and scalable, and that's often referred to as the stroke. When I select it and I come over to the design panel on the right, I could see my stroke value. I could adjust the weight. I could change how it's positioned on the shape. And there's a number of advanced settings as well that you can be able to trigger. I can change how the joins are set. I could change it from solid to dashed. I can even adjust these values. So the thing that you're going to learn is as you're creating these graphics, you're going to have a lot of options for how you customize them and how you bring them to life on the canvas. Here too, this is another object. When I look, this is using a Boolean operation. This is a concept we're going to cover a little later. And what it is it has a nested shape inside that's actually performing a live cut. So then this way I have almost two shapes kind of creating this one singular shape. Those Boolean operations are going to be really handy for crafting out icons and unique shapes as you're working. Now with Figma Draw, we have the opportunity to create brushes. You're going to see here on the stroke value there is a brush that's being applied. Brushes are dynamically applied as well as vector. They're often might be confused as being more photographic because there's a lot of texture involved, but with Figma, we have vector brushes that allow for a bit more expression. Here too, this is how effects work in Figma. You might be thinking, well, that blur doesn't look very vector, but it's still a non-destructive operation. These effects are still scalable because they are making use of mathematical properties. So when I select this object, I look over here, this is the effects panel, and this is where these effects that are non-destructive, that are scalable, are applied to our shapes. Here too, this is another one of those effects. This is a texture effect. And what's interesting about this texture effect is I'm using a pattern fill with it. So that pattern fill is going to have a number of different properties associated with it. giving me the opportunity to adjust that pattern. So once again, we're delving into a bit more expressiveness with the shapes. And lastly, here, this is a repeat. A repeat is going to give you the opportunity to create, very interesting arrangement of objects. And you can see how these effects, as we're adding them to our vector shapes, are going to stack on top of one another. I feel like we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So what now? I'm going to take a step back and thinking about what this means for illustration. So in Figma, and these examples that I'm going to show you right here, this is actually made by a former student of mine. And this work is actually nothing new. This is vector illustration that was created in Figma in 2019, right? So there's actually a bit of age on this illustration, but it just shows you the power of very simple vector graphics. So here you can see we have some shapes. They're a bit organic, but also a bit mechanical. And when you look at how it's constructed, right, creating a vector illustration is about kind of mimicking the properties that you see on an object. You're going to see colors, there's a slight gradient. You're sort of mimicking lighting by having a highlight and a shadow. So vector illustration is constructed in a unique way where you have these layers and shapes that are kind of put together to make something a bit more cohesive, right? You're almost kind of creating a bit of an illusion when you're creating a simple graphic that can then be scaled. Even here, the illusion of a texture by creating simple strokes and adjusting the color opacity, you can get some really interesting output. If you want to see other illustrations along this vein, if you look over on the left in the layers panel, you'll see student project illustrations. So this was created with a number of students in one of my classes at the Rochester Institute of Technology, where we were creating these illustrations that mapped to a specific industry. Now, one way that you can tell that these are vector illustrations is if you press, I'm going to press Command Y, or if you don't, Command Y isn't working for you, we'll use that quick action shortcut, Command K, and type in outline mode, show outlines, right? The shortcut is also Shift Command O right here. And what that does is it shows you the underlying construction of those vector graphics. A lot of times illustrators like to show the outlines of their work as a matter of showing off, to say, hey, this is how I constructed it. You can see that I made and arranged these individual pieces to make the complex illustration you see before you. Once again, I can press Command K and disable that show outlines, and I'm back in a normal mode. So we're going to go back up to that top page where we were, just so you can kind of get a reference for it, right? So there's a lot of power in creating custom vector illustration graphics. All right, so now we're going to start with the basics. I've already covered a number of ways that Figma vectors can sort of create shapes, that we can have textures, but we're going to start back at square one. So shapes, fills, and strokes. In Figma, you can create shapes very easily using the shape tool. Each shape tool here down at the bottom, you can see rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star. They each have little secrets of their own. So I'm going to head down here and you're going to see I have selected this rectangle, these little dots over in the corner that allows me to draw on a radius so I can adjust the corner radius to make it a rounded rectangle. Now, by selecting the object, coming over here to corner radius, if I want to adjust them individually, there's a option over here that says individual corners. That'll give me the opportunity to adjust these numbers manually. So you can type in a number or you can hover over the icon and adjust that there. So I'm able to hold the left key button, right? I'm clicking and dragging, and you see that it's adjusting that corner radii. And I can even go in and adjust the corner smoothing to get more of a smoother approach in the way that that corner is made. circle graphics as well. When I select the circle graphic, you'll see the arc tool. I can actually draw out a sweep. I can adjust the ratio and the start point. This is going to give you a lot of opportunity to create more precise kind of like arc graphics when working with this tool. A lot of people use them to make activity trackers and or sort of graph modules. So this tool is great. Another kind of shortcut with this one is if I drag the ratio all the way to the edge, 100%, and I swap the fill and the stroke. So here right now we have a fill. I'm going to press Shift X. Shift X is going to move the fill to the stroke. If I press it again, Shift X, it's moving to the fill, Shift X to the stroke. And what this does is this gives me the ability to adjust this as well. So now you can see I have these nice little tips at the end. And when I go into the advanced stroke settings, here I can apply round endpoints. Or if I wish, I could even put in like little arrow endpoints. Those are massive arrows. That's okay. Let's change those endpoints to like little circle dots. There we go. They're once again still a little bit too big. But what's cool about this is, you have this sort of non-destructive edge to it. But if you apply those little rounded corners, it's going to give you a much nicer activity graphic, right? So that's going to be a lot nicer. So what I did there, swap the fill in the stroke, Shift X, because otherwise, if I try to round out these corners, it's not going to look as good. If I round out those corners there, it's going to be a little bit off. It's not going to look right. So I drag that corner radius back down to 0. I swap the fill in the stroke with Shift X, and then I move that ratio all the way to the end. And then here is my stroke value. And I go into the advanced stroke settings and apply it as a solid with rounded endpoints. And that's going to look a lot nicer for you. All right. And next, we have the polygon tool. The polygon tool provides a bounding box that allows you to better censor any polygon that you have. So if you're worried about this extra space at the bottom of the triangle, it's effectively there to allow you to better censor it when you're making a play button. So once again, the polygon tool can be found down here. When you drag this little secret dot, I like to call them the secret dots. When you drag this little secret dot, it gives you larger sided polygons. So if you want a hexagon, you could do that. And then you can even round out the radius. Using other tools, this was much more of a burden and much more difficult to accomplish. And that's why I appreciate that Figma does it in this way. And then the start tool is great. Let's say you need to make an AI icon of some sort and you need that little 4-point star, you just drag it down right there and voila, you got that shape. So that can be found right here is that start tool. Now, the reason that I'm focusing on those shapes is that shapes can be used to be combined and as good starting points for creating the graphics that you're going to be making in Figma. Next, we're going to talk about the pen tool. I know I'm moving a bit fast. Don't worry. This is going to be recorded. It will be shared out, trying to be as complete with some of these tools as possible. But once again, let's go. Pen tool, Bezier curves, and vector networks. NetOworks. Let's spell that right. Networks. There we go. So a lot of what those shapes that we've been working with. So if I draw out here a rectangle, this is and double click, I can actually see how that rectangle is created using these individual points, right? That's kind of at the core of vector graphics. Now, the pen tool and the pencil tool in Figma allow you to kind of create more custom graphics that deviate from those shapes. So if I take a look here at this line, if I double click on it, I can see the points that are creating it. Now, when you're working in Figma, there's actually a number of shortcuts and actions that you can kind of trigger as you're working to have more control over these vector lines, right? So the first one is the pen tool. When I press the P key, it's going to open up the pen tool. You'll see it right there. And I can start to draw a more custom shape. And you might even say, oh, hey, that's cool, but it's very rigid. right? Now that I have that shape drawn, it's drawn with the stroke in mind. If I want to swap the fill and the stroke, I can press Shift X. And then now instead of just being the stroke, it's the fill, Shift X. Now it's just the stroke. Now, if I want to make this a bit more organic, each one of these points can also go from just being an edge to a curve. So when I press the command key, that's going to be the control key on Windows, you'll notice it trigger down here as the bend tool. If I were to just click on all of these points, right, I start to get more of an organic shape right off the bat. Right. So this is going to give me something a bit more organic. I can press Shift X to kind of change that out. When I double click inside of it, you can see each of these points I can move, and I can even move and adjust those handles. The way that vector handles work is you primarily want to put them on the outermost edge points of a graphic as you're making it. And what it does is you can see how it's essentially defining how this curve is moving along this point. So if you're to double click here, and you're inside of this vector object, right? You'll see these little tools pop up. I can hold down the command key, control key if you're on Windows, and click on each one of those points, and you'll see it relax each one of those handles. Each handle, when you select it, it has different abilities. No mirroring means that that handle is broken, and each one of those handles happens to work on an individual basis, right? So right here, I'm controlling those handles individually. When I select that point again and instead change it to mirror angle, it will always keep the angle in mind. So the previous one, ideal for edges. This one, ideal for curves. Now it keeps the distance of this separate, right? So it's not as balanced. So you can still have more control of how that's being made. Now, when I select it again and I choose the last one, mirror angle and length, you will see that in both directions, the handle is kind of moving in either direction. Now you can adjust these while you're just working. I'm going to show you if you hit Command and Option or Control and Alt. When you hover over, you'll notice the cursor change to this little, what is often referred to as the Convert Anchor Tool point. And this will allow me to break the edge. I can also just click on the center, and you'll see that it swaps whether it's an edge or a curve. So those of you that are already well-versed in vector tools, this is going to be nothing new to you, but it still may be new that you have this much control over it in Figma. Even when I select the handle, right, this handle point itself, I could change its X and Y position, how it's positioned there on the canvas. So here I can select that handle and control just that individual handle on its own. You'd be surprised at the fine-tuned controls that you actually have with these in Figma. So I'm going to show you right here the kind of power of these vector points. So here there's a circle on the canvas. You'll see it's underneath that square. Now, when I double click to go inside of that vector mode, I could see those points. I'm going to hold down the Command and the Option key and just click on each one of those edges, and you'll see it's just a square. And if I click on each one of those edges once again, it'll turn it and release those handles and make a perfect circle, right? So the releasing of the handles is doing its best job available to make that graphic as smooth as can be. Now, when I double click inside of this vector object, you'll see that I have points that don't line up, right? I can use the pen tool. Oops. Let's see. I can use the pen tool here. If you ever are automatically connected to another point, press escape. That's going to be this shortcut right here, the let go of pen tool, escape. So if I wanted to connect these points, I can easily connect those points there. Or if I wanted to join these points, I can select those 2 points and I can press Command J, Control J if you're on Windows. And that join, Command J, will automatically join those endpoints to make it a nice closed shape. When you have a closed shape, you can press Shift X and you can get a fill. So now here I can actually command click on all of these points. That's going to use the bend tool to easily make it more organic. Now you can also use this bend tool on any line in between those points to begin to modify your shape as well. You can always go back to the normal move tool, right? That's going to be the V key on your keyboard. That's going to allow you to move those points as you're starting to generate a more organic shape. Sometimes I like to reset the handle. So I can just reset by just kind of going back to that edge before I begin to work through it once again. So I'm resetting all of those edge points right there. And that can be a new starting point. Now, the points themselves, if you delete one, you'll notice that it then breaks the shape, right? So if I'm working on a really cool graphic, let's say that this is like supremely amazing work that I'm doing here, and I do that, I'm going to feel kind of sad when in reality, I don't need this extra point here. What I can do is delete and heal. That's going to be shift delete. And so what that means is when I select that point, shift delete, it'll heal it and keep the graphic there. Now, I keep saying now a lot. Let's say we're have a more organic drawing as we're working with this. And if I select that point and I want to delete it, I press shift delete. Figma will do its absolute best to try to maintain the existing curve that you had. I'll show you that one more time. So if I have a few extra points here, let's say I'm trying to clean up my graphic, right? I'm adding a point, adding a point, right? We have all of these other points here. I can select them and delete them. And guess what? We got a selection tool. So if you come down here, we have the lasso tool. It's the Q key. When you turn on the lasso tool, you can select the points that you want. I selected them, and then I can press shift delete, and then it smooths that right on out. So I'll show you that one more time. I double click in. I have all these extraneous points. Let's add in a few more for good measure, right? Right? We want to create vector graphics with as few points as possible. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to press the Q key or the lasso tool. I'm going to select all of those points and then press shift delete. And it looks so crisp. It is so clean. I am feeling great about that, right, Rabia? That is so cool. Okay, so once again, some of these shortcuts, pen tools, the P key, that's going to allow you to begin to draw. The move tool, you're going to press this key a lot. It's kind of like your reset. You're always going to press V to kind of go back to wherever you're working. So I'm in here, I'm in Figma, right? I'm using the pen tool, I'm adding points. I press escape key if I want to lose that. But let's say if I want to just touch a point, I don't want to use the pen tool. I press the V key. That's the normal move tool. If you are familiar with other digital imaging applications, the V key is also the move tool in them as well. All right. So I'm seeing some questions like you'd prefer some of these to be in the UI. So like a lot of them kind of exist within the UI. So the bend tool is here. The lasso tool is here. Some of these other sort of modifier functions are just kind of like, you know, those modifying aspects of it. So the convert anchor point tool, it's over here. The shortcuts are there to save you a lot of time because as folks are working, they're going to be compounding a lot of the interactions as they are going. So I have this here. Ooh, measure distance. I didn't cover this one. I have these here so that you're aware that these features exist and also just to start to develop a repertoire like as you're working. So I'll show you this measure real quick. The measure will actually let me see. So if I select this point and then I hover over this point and I press the option key or the alt key, I can actually see the distance of that point across any edge on the graphic, as well as any of those key nodes. So if you're working on very precise artwork or you care very greatly of the delta between your points, you can easily use the option key or the alt key on Windows to begin to see that distance. That is going to be a deep cut that I guarantee you a lot of Figma experts don't even know. Ah, I'm glad that you're enjoying this, Lee. Okay, so we are gonna now kind of focus in on Figma Draw. So we've covered the basics. You know that you can build shapes in Figma. You know that we have a robust pen tool with a lot of opportunity for skill building, right? There's so much that you can do with this pen tool, but now let's start to get a little bit more tactical with some of these features that are a bit more expressive in Figma. So this tool is the variable width tool. This tool dropped yesterday. This is brand new. This just became available in Figma. If you had a Figma window open prior to yesterday, you have to hit refresh to see this one. The variable width tool in Figma is located over here whenever you select any vector line. But since we are going to be working in Figma Draw, I'm going to implore you to come down here and enable draw mode. When you're in draw mode, you'll notice that the UI changes a bit. You have the pencil tool, you have the brush tool, the pen tool. They look a little different. They're a little more suited for drawing, as it were. Over here on the left, you'll notice your layers panel is a little more visually expressive, helping you better identify the object that you have on your canvas in a way that you can see it at a glance. So when I select this object, I can easily see its visual representation in the layers panel. Now, when I select and I double click in and I select this variable width tool, you'll notice that there is this sort of fuchsia or maroon, no, magenta, that's the color, this magenta handle. And this handle allows you to better set the thickness at any given point along a line. So I can click here and then adjust the width of this shape. And this is going to allow you to be more organic. Prior to this tool, you had to have a number of different workarounds in Figma to accomplish this style in your artwork. So here you can see I'm beginning to adjust that. Now, with the variable width tool, right, you can just double click on any one of these graphics. There's actually default settings. There's default width profiles under the stroke tool when you are inside of Figma Draw. So I double click, I can see this cool little squiggle that I have here. And when I go under the stroke, I see the width profile. It actually is giving me some defaults to work with, right? So this is already part of that width tool. Now, when I double click and I go into width mode, I can see, oh, okay, this is where it's set. And it is set in a way that I can easily begin to adjust it and make that custom width. Where this becomes very handy is an illustration. If you look, I got this illustration of myself, and this was the type of illustration that I wish that I had the variable width tool, but I have since been able to apply it. So you can see I can make more of a thicker value here as I'm working with my illustration to kind of emphasize a shadow or a shade. Let's take a look at this outline that I have here. When I double click on it, you can see how it's constructed of these vector points, as well as these handles. When I over select it with my mouse, there are all of those edges. That's great. Now click on this width tool, and any point I can begin to make thicker and thinner, so I can control. Now, you do want to be aware of the start and the end point as well. So you'll notice that there's a bit of a discrepancy there, but now I can make that much more expressive. I can kind of change how this graphic looks. So typically when you're working in Figma and you're using the pencil tool, right? The pencil tool is creating everything at an even stroke. When you go and apply the width profile, right, you have a little bit more variability, and that can always be adjusted when you double click. Now, that being said, in Figma, we have this thing called vector networks. So there might be the occasional graphic that you go to apply the variable width tool to, and you may notice that you don't have, it won't let you, right? It'll get phased out. So if I look right now, it says I can't use it, and it tells me to use the variable width. I have to break branching vector and action menu. I'll explain what that means. This is one of the first things that I encountered, and I want to make sure that if you encounter it, you don't get scared. All right. So essentially what that means is in Figma, you can have these things called vector networks. What a vector network is, it's actually a great thing, right? It allows me to make something like an arrow graphic. So let's say I want to make an arrow in Figma, and in other vector editing applications, I can't create another line from this node. Nodes usually allow two lines to go off of it. So here I can add that point, and I can apply while holding down the shift key another line. And what it does is it creates this vector network. Now, great for complex graphics, great for icons, but when you're applying the variable width, it doesn't know how to profile that direction in the best possible way. So this is what you have to do, right? It says break branching vector in action menu. We already talked about the action menu, Command K, and I say break. Let's select the object. There you go. I select it. Command K, break branching vector network into paths, right? And I've done that. And now I can see I have the individual pieces. So that's going to be something you're going to have to be aware of, is that you need to have just a single line. But once you do, you can go in and apply the vector width tool. So let's say if I did want to apply this to a graphic, I can easily take this. Let me delete that. And I can actually duplicate this. I'm going to hit Command D, Control D if you're on Windows. That duplicates it. I have a copy. You can see it's on top of itself. And I can flip that, right? So Shift V is shift flip vertical, right? And I can begin to start to play around with how I might want that to show up. You can adjust your vector settings with that as well. So if you want to like round out those corners and adjust how that graphic is going to be sort of represented for you. So I can begin to, like, let's say I'm going to move this in, right? And what I can do is I could even converge these on the center. All right. So next up, brushes. Brush tool is down here. What that's going to give you the power to do is to kind of create more organic brush strokes. You can come down here and choose different brush strokes that can be applied in Figma. Now, if you are an iPad user, you can use Sidecar along with your iPad as an extension of your monitor when you're using the Figma desktop app, and draw with your Apple Pencil, and we will acknowledge pressure sensitivity. So if you're using iPad, you can use Sidecar to extend on your Mac and make use of pencil brushes. However, if you don't, and I'm not currently using it, you can still see I can get some really cool like output. It renders the brush as you draw. Fun fact, I got to make about half of these brushes. So these are my own custom design, this one being my favorite. And you can see that as I'm drawing this out, I got this really cool effect. Now, this effect too can also be used with variable width. So I can even begin to adjust the width of that as well and start to get some really interesting visuals. Now, brushes can be applied to any stroke value. Here, I click on this graphic, I go to the stroke, and I can come down to here, the stroke settings. Is this where it is? Yeah. In the stroke settings, you can go to brush, and I can change, which brush it's applied to. And even as I drag along this window, you can see the brushes being applied to the graphics. If I make the brush a little bit thicker, you'll be able to see that better. So here, I can see how that art is being applied to the graphic, which is kind of cool. I could see it in real time as it's moving through. And just so y'all know, there's a bunch of custom brushes in this file. So as you're moving through, you will actually see custom brushes that were made specific to this file. and I'll show you how to make custom brushes. So here we go. I have a brush there. Couple other things that you can do to the stroke as well. You'll notice that there's the brush setting. You can even change the direction of the brush. So if you don't like how it's being applied, you can go front direction, back direction, and change the width profile of it as well. So all of those features, all of those settings are kind of like at your disposal, right? To easily create that. Now, if you want a more sort of generative stroke, you can click on dynamic stroke, and dynamic stroke will apply various properties of frequency, wiggle, and smoothen to make more of a textured, kind of like hand drawn style to your illustration. So if I take a look, this is a dynamic brush. It is more generative, and it basically comes up in the brush settings right here. So stroke settings, basic, dynamic, and brush. Those are all new features of Figma Draw. Now I'm going to show y'all how to make your own brush. So let's say here, I'm going to use the pencil tool. I'm just going to make a little wiggly thing. There we go, making a little wiggly thing, right? And what this is this is a vector path, right? I'm going to close these edges. I've just closed the edges of my vector path. And I'm going to swap the fill and the stroke. Keep coming to that. Very important shortcut. You might want to remember it. Shift X. There we go. So let's say this graphic is beautiful. It's amazing. I love it. I'm going to right click on it. And then there's an option while I am inside of Figma Draw mode. I can create a brush. I can create a stretch brush. Now it's going to be named whatever I called that layer. So this is an opportunity to name your layer. So I'm going to double click there. I'm going to call this Miggy Demo Brush. And when I right click and I create that brush and I got a stretch brush, and now when I draw with the brush tool, I can look for it. There it is, my demo brush. Here in the options, I can either rename it or delete it. I'm going to leave it as is, and I can draw with it. Now, if I want to change the color of that as well, I can easily do that. And I have this custom brush. Brushes can be changed anytime. Let's say you don't like the style of a brush, you want to update it. You can select it, go over to the stroke panel, and then pick a different brush to then apply to that graphic. How cool is that? I also like taking text. I'm just going to take Alex's name, Alex. Here we go. I have Alex's name right here. I'm going to make this really heavy. Let's see, Alex and Miggy, right? I'm going to make this into a brush. I'm going to select it. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to choose outline stroke. So it's going to take all of the values of this. It's going to it's going to take the text itself and it's going to outline it into vectors. So there it is. You can see it. And then I'm going to flatten it. You're going to see the flatten option right here, flatten. It's going to be Option Shift F. And now that it's flattened, when I right click on it, I can create a brush. It's called the stretch brush. And when I go to brush, I can go and preview, and I got our Alex and Miggy brush that I can also go into and make some Microsoft Word art. There we go. I got some Microsoft Word art, Alex and Miggy right there. Right.
Miggy, I
So
think you just made my favorite new brush. That's
I just
awesome.
made your favorite new brush. Amazing. It's a lot of fun, and you can find a lot of creative applications for applying this as well, right? Every brand in 2025, Shannon, absolutely. So here, once again, right? And then if you have a shape, right? Like let's say I have a polygon and I want to apply to this polygon that I have a stroke effect that is, our custom Alex and Miggy brush. There it is. And then I'm just going to increase the stroke of it. There we go. Increase it. Bah, right there. It's not going to look great, but it's getting there. We can make some work of it. There we go. Bam. And for those of you wanting to use text on a path, I didn't even mention this yet, but yeah, if I were to take an ellipse and I press the T key and I just click on a little edge there, I could say Alex and Miggy. I don't even need to make a brush. I just have it right there. And then I can quickly and easily, move this around. It's like the UI of this is really nice. And I could swap it to be on the inside or the outside or the inside or the outside. And that could be applied to pretty much anything. So I could take the pencil tool, I can draw it out there. I can press the T key, which is the type tool, click on that path and say Alex and Miggy edu. And then we can reduce the size of that type. I'm going to hold down the Option, the Alt key on Windows to just drag that type down, and you can see how it's being mapped to that stroked line. So if I had longer text, I could easily do that. All right. Hopefully, y'all are having fun with this. I'm having a lot of fun with this. Effects that we have in Figma can also be used to make your graphics much more rich, right? I'm going to show you an example where I have a squid illustration. Actually, yeah. So the squid illustration, I have this cool little texture right here. This texture is just an effect that I applied to this circle. It's a texture effect. If I hide the texture, you see we have a little circle. When I apply the texture, you can see that we have a nice, more organic and detailed version of that, right? That texture is going to be really helpful. And what's great about it is that it's applied non-destructively. So it's the same vein as vector work in that it can be scaled, and you could see that that texture is just there and has been applied. I'll show you another illustration that I made recently with some of the texture. I believe right here, this Ola Taco. Actually, I think I'm using dynamic stroke, but we'll hop in over here to the effects panel. I'm going to turn on texture, and we're going to throw that into the background on this graphic, and you'll see very quickly, this type of organic visual, if you were to manually draw it out, it would severely make the program slow down because it has to map all of those points. But when you're using the texture effect in Figma, I'll show you exactly where that is. What that's going to do is be a lot more optimized in your workflow because it's kind of using an effect as opposed to manually drawing all out. So now when I select this shape here, I come over to the effects panel, I choose texture. Here's the options for texture. I could change the size. You can see then it makes the shape more organic. I could adjust the radius here. By adjusting those values, you can see how it is then being applied to the object. If I was to click on the fill and have a gradient fill. So a gradient fill allows me to move from one color to another color. So you can treat this like lighting here, where I have just the red to the dark red. If I hide the texture here on the right, you just get this, nice gradient. But when I turn on that texture, I can begin to see like how that texture is applied to the graphic. I can even clip it to the shape if I want to retain the shape's integrity, right? I still want to see the outside circle. I can clip it, or I can have it texture out just like this. So this effect gives you a lot of opportunity for texturizing and affecting the work itself. The common thing that was a big request in Figma is this feature called a progressive blur. So you'll see here this graphic that has a number of different effects applied. Here it's very crisp, and then it starts to get a bit blurry. When I select this red circle here, go to the effects panel and turn on layer blur, there's this new option called progressive. I can change the endpoint and the start point. So the start point, there's no blur, and then the endpoint, there's a lot of blur. And there's an on canvas control that gives you the opportunity to move this around, right? There we go. You can see how that works. And it can work on any number of graphics. I'm going to select this illustration that I have over here. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to take this graphic right now. It's individual pieces, right? You can see I have my hat, I have my beard, I got my nose. I can select all of it. I'm going to grab all of it and I'm going to group it all together, right? So I'm going to select it all. I'm going to right click and I'm going to group that selection. So it's just a single object in my layers panel. I see it over there. I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to call it Miggy's face. Right. So here I have my face. I'm going to come down to the effects panel. So the effects happen to whatever object you apply it to. So if you have a container, such as a group or a frame, it will then apply to that group or frame. So here, if I apply texture, right, the texture is being applied to everything. I can easily hide it or I can remove it. Let's say I want to apply instead the layer blur. Let's use the progressive blur. And once again, I select the start point 0, the end point much more blurry, and that can allow me to have more of these sort of raster-esque effects. Raster graphics being kind of pixel based, right? But because it's being applied live and using math, it's non-destructive. You could see I keep zooming in, right? And a lot of that quality is just maintained on the graphic. Um,
Hey, Maggie, it's Alex. You do have a few questions in the questions portion. I'd love to save at least 5 minutes at the end because we've gotten some really great questions.
well, can we go to 5 after? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. I'm going to take a quick look at some of these questions, see if I'm addressing any of them. Why does the layers panel only show assets I've selected? So right now my layers panel is reflecting the way that it is in Figma Draw. So like when I'm in Figma Draw, it's kind of like focusing on the objects that I currently select. How come when I click on the pen and want to draw a shape, it just drags and doesn't go from point to another, allowing me to create a shape? So when you click on the pencil and you want to draw a shape, you have to click and then let go. So I think what you might be doing is if you click and hold, right? What it's doing, it's allowing you to create the Bezier curve. So if you click, 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 and then you can then hold down the command key and start to pull out those curves. This is usually how I might start out my workflow. So some people like to click and drag, right? When they click and drag, you kind of get the Bezier curves. I like to draw straight lines from one to the next before I then do that. And then here, let's see. Can we change the side of the circles, start point and end point applied to a path? So that's blending. There are plugins that allow you to do that. So currently it's not a native feature in Figma, but there are some plugins. If you press Command K, go to plugins and widgets. I believe it's called like an object blend. But yeah, so feel free to look for that in Figma's community. I did, let's see, I did that one. Oh, let me just select these here. I did that one, that one. How do I change the width of an entire shape? Can you do that with the variable width tool? So shapes themselves kind of have like the ability to just kind of change the width. You can sort of modify it on the canvas. So that's going to be like the shape. Or if you have several, right? When you select them all, adjusting them, that's going to adjust that there. If you want to retain the aspect ratio, you're going to click here to choose lock aspect ratio. And then what it is, it's going to keep the the both dimensions locked as I scale them. If I didn't have lock aspect ratio turned on, when I turn it off, only one side will be increased and decreased. So sidecar work with PC? I don't believe so. I believe there might be other applications that allow you to do that. AstroPad was one that I had used previously that worked out pretty well. So it kind of broadcast the screen onto the iPad. I don't know if it's a an app that still works. How would you break one line into two parts? So here you can I know we were considering how that could be done, but here I can click on when you hover over any vector node, it's always going to find the middle, right? So here it's always finding the middle. And then I can select that middle point and I can delete it. So it's just a matter of making sure that you have enough space. I can select this line here and I can delete in the middle, and then that line will be broken off into additional parts as well. But I know that we were exploring something of a cut tool. So be on the lookout. It might be something you see in the near future. And that's like another way that that can be accomplished. So I'm going to head back off to the this tool here. I wanted to show y'all a few things really quick. We have some new shortcuts with Boolean operations. Boolean operations allow you to take multiple shapes and put them together. So here, this is a union operation. A union operation lets you take all of the shapes that you have. You'll notice that when you're in Figma Draw mode, Boolean operations are down here. So I can union them together. Now they are together as one object. And in the layers panel, you can see I still have my respective individual objects there. So subtract allows you to subtract one shape from another. So I could bring this down. I can select both of those objects, come down here and use subtract, and it'll cut away the top shape from the bottom shape and then kind of give you this new output. Once again, in the layers panel, both objects are still there. So my rectangle is still there, my S is still there. So I can even adjust that as I go. And then anything I apply to the topmost shape, like any filter or effect or even corner radius, will then be applied to that object. If I change any of the sub objects, you'll see that they will still be applied. So it's kind of like a feature tree if you're familiar with that concept. Same here, intersect. I can select these two objects. Intersect will find the space in between them. So you'll notice it down here. When I apply that, it finds the overlapping area, and that is the result. Once again, I can go in here and I can move, what is the position or placement of that first object. Exclude is going to take the space that's in between them. It's going to take the intersecting space and create a new object of it, right? So it cuts it out and it takes the outside aspects and it excludes the overlap. Then flatten. So flatten is going to happen when you have something like a union object, but you want it to just be a single vector path. So right now, this F is made up of these three rectangles. When I trigger flatten, it's going to be, let's see, here's my union. When I trigger flatten, you'll see that it's right here, flatten. Now it is just a singular vector path, right? And so when you are ready to kind of apply that, then you get it. Last feature here within this vein. So Boolean operations are non-destructive in that every one of those union, subtract, what it does is it creates a group and it still keeps the underlying shapes. We have this other tool now called a shape builder. So if you want to let's say I have this half circle, I have a few other circles here. I can select them all. And when I go inside of the vector editing mode, right, I can double click, I can hold shift and shift. And then down here is the shape builder tool. So what this lets me do is add or subtract. So if I want to make this bat wing here, I hold down the option key. It's going to be the alt key on Windows, and I can cut away all of those pieces. There we go. That was pretty cool. I'll show you that one more time. So I select this first shape. I'm in vector editing mode. I hold shift and click those other points. Now I choose the shape builder tool and I press the option key and I can just draw what I want to remove. There we go. I removed all that. So now I got a little bat wing. So I can press Command D, duplicate, Shift H, flip horizontal. So previously we did Shift V for horizontal. I have some little bat wings here. Let's say I want to put together this little bat head, right? I can double click, hold down the Shift key, select all these points. And if I don't want to union them, but I want to use a shape builder, I can just click and everything that I want to become part of the shape. Now it is just one vector object and there it is. It's just working together. So shape builder tool is also in Figma. So it's similar to Booleans, but a bit different in that you're fully taking that in. Last two concepts. I'm going to try to cover these really quickly. So then that way you can at least know that they're in Figma and know that they're rad. These are patterns. You could take any object. You can go to its fill. you can add another fill to it. So let's say a pattern fill. Here are the options. I select a source. I'm going to select this yellow dot. Down here, let's make it 100%. And so here I could change the scaling, the spacing, and the alignment and apply any object to be like a pattern of as a fill. And if I make any adjustments to this first one here, it will then remember that and apply. So let's say I want to have these diagonal lines on this fill. I can create a new pattern. I select source, I choose the object. Because we're adding another one, we want to make sure its opacity is 100%. And I can align it to the middle, and then I could scale this down, right? This used to take so much work in other applications, and I'm so glad that Figma made this so helpful. One really cool thing is I can apply this as, let's say, a pattern fill here. So I'm going to select the source. Let's do this fun little graphic that I have here. Right, there we go. Let's make this, blue, right? And then now I'm going to take this one and apply the graphic that has a pattern applied to it and make that a pattern. So it's patternception, folks. So I'm going to select the source. That's going to be my source. And I now have a pattern of patterns in Figma. So if I make any adjustments to this pattern, it affects this pattern and it affects this pattern and it's fast, right? How cool is that? So I could even add in another fill here. Let's add in a solid color fill. I'm going to drag it to be underneath that one. Let's make that red and increase that to that point. So I can make some really fun graphics there. So even as I make adjustments on this tool, it affects the other one. Great for graphic design. Last thing we're going to cover, the repeater tool. So in Figma, you can create really cool rotationally symmetric graphics that can be then updated in real time, just like this. And so you could even have that be more complex graphics. What that is going to be is the repeat transform. So when you're in Figma Draw, you can come here, you could change the number of objects, you could change the amount of gap, and then you could adjust the original object itself, and that will be affected there as well. So all you have to do to make that happen, I'm going to draw a simple line here just for ease of use and time. I'm going to select this object. I'm going to come over here to the top right. I'm going to go to additional transform modifiers. I'm going to click on radial repeat, and that radial repeat is going to apply. Now, if I make any adjustments to my graphic, it's then going to be there. So here, if I want to adjust that vector point, I want to adjust that vector curve, I can now make some really cool graphics. Maybe I can make an AI icon, like for a startup or something. It looks like one of those right now. They really love the rotational symmetry. And if you want to burn that into the canvas, let's say you no longer want it to be editable, I can apply those transforms to the canvas. And there they are. I have all those individual objects that can now be animated. If you want to export any of the graphics that you've been working with in Figma, when you select the object, you're going to come down here, go to export. A lot of the vector objects, the vector aspects of it can be exported as SVG. That stands for scalable vector graphic. Could be exported as PDF, PNG, and JPEG. You could choose the size of the export, and there's additional export settings that allow you to change the color profile as well as the image resampling when it converts the vector graphics over to raster. So just wanted to highlight that this is a good enough primer to get anybody to become dangerous in Figma. I will implore you to take a look at some of the examples that are here in the pages as well. So making icons, we have those student product illustrations. We have a number of different project icons. This was part of another class that I ran where we were creating these icons based off of these concepts using very few colors. We have the squid illustration. We have the Ola taco illustration. illustrations made with Figma Draw features. I even have a very simple OG Apple remote just because I like the use of to demonstrate how you can really name all your layers and organize and structure an illustration to kind of have the effect of lighting. And then I have some additional brushes. These were some of the original brushes that I made in Figma Draw, along with Raji King, another designer advocate, now turned product designer at Figma. So